the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting for April 10th, 2024 to order. The meeting is held at the Municipal Building, Council Chamber, second floor, 355 East Central Street. Notice to all residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream of the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or the live broadcast on Comcast 9, Channel 9, and Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are also archived by Franklin TV on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29 for those who missed the live meeting. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in 1-929-205-6099. The ID number is 827-4079-4482. There's also the link to the Zoom webinar on the agenda on the Town Hall website. If you would like to speak, you need to write in your full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon joining the webinar, and you need to raise your hand to be able to speak. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street addresses before commenting. Councilor Frangillo is online. He is remote with us tonight. And in the town chambers, I have Councilor Chandler, Councilor Sheridan, and myself are here, along with the town administrator, the assistant town administrator, and our wonderful director of community development, Brian Taverner, is over there. So we will just jump in, because I guess we're already done with all that. And I'm going to fix your microphone so you don't get yelled at by Steve. And we are going to talk about the MBTA Communities Compliance Update that Brian promised us. And we have a few other things that go along with it too, which is good. So there you go, Brian.
Thank you.
While he settles down. Yeah, there's some things in here from the Franklin for All recommendations, which is great. So thank you for putting that in tonight's agenda for us.
Yeah, for the record, I'm Brian Taberner, the Director of Planning and Community Development. Last time I was in front of you, I said that we were working with MAPC about the compliance modeling for the our MBTA communities zoning in the downtown.
Right.
And I said if I didn't get it close enough, I'd be back with some amendments that would do the trick. So that's what you have in front of you. MAPC has been working with me to get closer and closer, but we're still 300 and some odd units off, which is hard to believe. So we need to get to that magic number of 1883, I believe it is, somewhere within a half a mile of the MBTA stations. And that is a multifamily by right units is what we're looking at. Mm-hmm. So all the zoning we did earlier over the last couple of years has helped us a lot. Starting out, we had 0 housing units that really qualified for the MBTA communities. But now, because of what we did, we went with by right housing, by right multifamily in C1 and general residential 5. That gave us the majority of what we needed. And then we changed the impervious coverage in the general residential 5. That also helped out a little. And the state has changed the compliance model and regulations a little since they started out back in August 2022, I think it was. And one of the big changes was they now will accept residential units in the upper floors of a downtown area. They did not accept that before. However, they now threw in another caveat in the regulations stating that if you're going to have that scenario, you cannot have a requirement for parking for commercial development in a mixed-use development.
Okay, all right.
So the commercial, so we can't have, so in our regulations, we do have a requirement for one parking space for 500 square feet of commercial, which is actually it's fairly easy for most most developers to meet. It's not really restrictive. It's the least restrictive of the rest of the zones in the town. But I can't figure out any other way without keep banging my head against the wall and to actually just get this done. Now, I think keep in mind that if a mixed-use development is proposed in our downtown area, in the downtown commercial zone, the housing units are required to have 1.5 parking
Right.
spaces. So if you have 10 housing units, you need 15 parking spaces. The commercial component on the first floor does not require any. That's what's being proposed now, and that's what the state is saying we need to do, so we can count the downtown commercial zoning district. So I've told some people from the state that, I want to just get this done, but, I really have a problem with the state going to that amount of detail and telling a town what they can and cannot do in zoning, but besides the point, it's just, we just have to either do it, or if you prefer, I can just go back and try again, talk to the state and keep coming up with different numbers, get a little, closer and closer and closer, but I don't think so, because the two zoning districts that we have, the C1 and the GR5, my calculations, all right, we have just over 1,900 housing unit possibly in those two zones. So we would meet our 1883, we would be fine. But the state's compliance model comes up with 1,500 and some odd
Right,
units. And that's a big difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't know if we would ever be able to get that close to the 18. So I am recommending that we just go with the changes to eliminate the parking requirement on a mixed-use development in downtown commercial. If it is a commercial only, they would have parking space requirements, okay? But if it's a mixed-use development, the residential would have the requirements, but not the commercial component.
Okay, and if we, can I interrupt you? Let me
What's
ask
that?
a-
Yeah.
Can I
By
clarify
all means.
something? Okay, so if when I first read this, I was like, well, wait a minute, shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't it be, like, if we're doing MBTA compliance, would the state say you have to be, no parking restrictions for the livable units, right? For the residential units, not the commercial units. But what you said was that we don't have to have, if we remove the restrictions from the commercial space in a mixed-use building, then we will become MBTA compliant
Correct.
for downtown only, the downtown commercial area.
Well, the downtown commercial
Yeah.
would become a part of our MBTA district, essentially. Right now, it can't be because of that one issue, yes.
Right, so then we add, that is the only thing we have to do, to add that district, and then we will become compliant.
Correct.
Okay.
So, but to
Right.
do that, I want
Yeah.
to make sure that we clarified in our parking regulations
Yeah,
the difference between a mixed-use development in the downtown and a commercial-only development, because the parking regulations are different.
right,
So,
right.
and that's the reason for one of the changes that I'm proposing.
And it's also, one of the things that was recommended,
Correct.
the Franklin for All project, is that we create a definition of mixed use,
Correct.
right? And so, and that's good.
Yeah. So I'm calling these A, B, and C bylaw amendments. The first would be A, which would add a definition for a mixed-use development into section 185-3.
All right, wait a minute, I got
If you'd like
mixed
to
up.
take,
Okay,
yeah, if you want to
I
take
got
the
A
time
now.
and read them or whatever, that's fine. But in general, it's a generic definition, And they didn't want to overregulate, didn't want to go crazy on anything. We just wanted to spell out what a mixed-use development was. And actually, the last part of it is to, it says, uses allowed within a mixed-use development are specific, for specific zoning districts are detailed in the use regulations. So all it's doing is saying that a development on a single parcel containing either more than one non-residential use or a combination of non-residential and residential uses. So mixed development can be, it can be in two different types of things. You could have a manufacturing and a retail, and that's actually considered a mixed use. That, way back when I was starting out, that was a common mixed use, and then people started saying, well, mixed use development, got to have residential. So that became really the definition that a lot of people refer to. But
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that it can be either way, a mixed use development.
But this definition is just residential and non-residential use?
It's either two non-residential uses,
Okay, all right, all
or
right.
it is a combination of non-residential and residential.
Cool. All right.
Non-residential.
Good.
So there's two different kinds. Most people think of it as a residential
Right.
and a non-residential on the same lot.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
fine, and that's what most people will be developing if that's, but either way, I want a definition to be clarify either way.
Good, thank you.
Okay. The next one is B, which is, it's changing to the parking, loading, and driveway requirements. And that removes a minimum parking space requirement for non-residential uses within a mixed-use developments in the downtown commercial district, zoning district. So that's what it does. If we can just go to it, you can see that we eliminated section B1, we rewrote a section B1. And now what we're doing is, we're saying residential units alone are 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit. Now, right now, residential development alone cannot be developed. But if it's already in the downtown as a residential only development, which are house or duplexes or whatever,
Right.
this is the requirement for that district.
Right, and it's
So-
already there,
And it's already there.
yeah.
So if somebody wanted to go and add an additional housing unit onto a residential, it does not have to be a mixed-use development. So we just want to make sure we clarify that it is what it is. Non-residential uses, one space for 500 square feet, that's the same as it is right now. Okay? For a mixed-use development, we're keeping the 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit, and we are eliminating the non-residential use. Okay? And as it says, non-residential uses within a mixed-use development in the downtown commercial zoning district are exempt from the section of the bylaw. So that cleans that up pretty easily. I don't see any, I thought about this a lot before we wrote this, and I don't see any problem with that. That will meet the MBT community's requirements. And the third one, C, adds into residential uses, it adds mixed-use development to the use regulation schedule. So, on usage schedule part 6, you have residential multifamily or apartment is 6.1. We're adding in C. And what we're doing, we are allowing it by right where it is allowed right now. For instance, where you can have a multifamily in the downtown commercial, there's no change there. The C1, there's no change there. In the neighborhood commercial, which we don't have any on the map anyway, there's no change there. In the general residential 5, it would require, a mixed-use development would require a special permit because the commercial component, in most cases, is not allowed in general residential 5. So I'm proposing a special permit. If they were residential only, they can get residential only by right. But if they're gonna have a mixed use, there would be a special permit through the planning board. So, That's about it. It summarizes it, and we shouldn't have any problem getting our 1,883. I think the downtown itself will be well over 400 more units, as, you know, as it is right now for the permitting, so we'll be well over what we require. If they ever listen to me down there, that, you know, we'd
was
be
gonna
okay
say.
now, but that's not.
I know.
Not happening.
But I think it's great that we can now, if we do this, we can add the downtown commercial to the community's map.
I agree.
It's important.
Yeah. It is, and what's interesting about it is the same state agencies were pushing for transit-oriented development and making sure you have a lively street front in your downtown, so you don't want residential uses down there. You want, and then they're telling you, well, we can't do that, you know, when these first regulations came out. And
Right.
it was like, wow.
That's like anti
is
to
tough.
downtown,
Yeah.
what downtown should be.
Yeah, it is, and so we have to give up on the commercial parking. I think most people in the downtown won't care too much on that.
Wow.
I
I think there's a lot of parking now, like all the things we've
There-
done already,
yeah.
right? We've opened up the parking
Sure.
for first come, first serve.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
so, that's,
My thought on it is if in 10 years
Right,
there's a problem with parking,
right.
great.
Address it
We'll
then.
deal with it then, right?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we should be fine for a while. And,
I think it would be awesome if there were too many people downtown
Yeah,
that they
right.
couldn't park.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, like,
Yeah.
like our businesses need customers.
Yeah.
And we've made it so that people can use the parking and we don't need to build more parking for that,
Right.
Right.
for that use. We already have that. That's just the way I think. But does anybody have any questions for Brian? I think Brian probably does, right? I'm gonna go to Brian first, and then I'm sure Kobe does online there, so I'll go to you after Brian, Kobe.
Hi, Brian. I just have a couple of questions so I can understand something. So downtown where Hang Tie is and that merch restaurant, you're picturing that, right? Is that what it's called still, Jamie?
Murchie.
Thank
Murchie?
you. So there's like 3 apartments upstairs there.
Yeah.
Now, does that make it count that those businesses would need no parking under this? Because there's 3 apartments technically
Well, if
attached?
they-
No, they wouldn't need-
That's a very good question. Technically speaking, they would not need it if these were passed. The commercial developments that have a residential component, if they're in their upper floors, they actually would not need the
Okay,
commercial
so-
parking spaces.
I just wanted to clarify. I appreciate
But they would
that.
make sure that they had if they're gonna do it that way, they would make sure they have to have 1.5 for each of the residential units. So, we're hoping it's
okay.
gonna be a balance. And it's
It
gonna
is,
be-
okay. That's why I was just wondering about that. And let me ask you if these count. So downtown, you're picturing where Pizzini Shoes is, right there, okay? Above that, I mean, probably a lot of people in Franklin don't know this, but it's like, I call it a flop house because there's just bedrooms, I mean, just rooms that you can rent. They share a bathroom down the end of the hall, and they cook on like hot plates. Now, does each one of those rooms count as a unit towards this?
I think you'd need to talk with the zoning enforcement officer on the issue. If it's an actual apartment, it's a housing unit. If it's a room with a hot plate, that doesn't really count as a actual.
Even though it's
I-
rented out
I think
as.
you need to
as a-
talk with the enforcement officer
Okay.
on that. I really don't know.
I'm just
sure
saying that would add another 10, I'm just trying to get to
Yeah.
1880.
1883.
1883, thank you.
800,
Yeah.
or what is?
Well, I mean, it comes right down to it. I mean, if it's, we allow by right one housing unit per 2,000 square foot of lot area. So somebody has 30,000 square feet, they're by right, they can have 15 housing units in there, on their lot, but they all have to be in the upper floors. So, and they have, I can build 3 floors by right, so you have 2 floors to build those 15 housing units there. Unless you seek a special permit for additional units and additional floors, and, it can be different like that. I don't see that you have more than 1 per 2,000 square foot in downtown right now, but it's possible, and I don't know how, you'd have to really take a really good look at each of the individual buildings there and assess how many are there and how many more you could put there. But it's
That's-
really not how many are there, it's what the zoning would allow,
Yeah.
is what the MBTA wants to see. So picture a total tear down.
Yeah.
And you're starting from fresh. How many housing units can you put on that lot by right? That's what MBTA wants to see. They don't care what's there really now.
Okay, so that's why I was asking what counted. All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Kobe?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And thank you for sharing the model spreadsheet. It took me a while to wrap my head around everything in there, but that was fun. If you're able, yeah, I mean, I think you're right that adding the DCD just inherently adds enough spaces. That feels like a weird loop around that we could just like add a new like density. But I'd be interested if you're willing to share the compliance model with the DCD, because you sent us the one with the C1 and GR5.
Yeah.
That would be appreciated. My biggest point or thought is that I'm excited to meet the state standard, and if this gets us there, great. I mean, why we shouldn't be an embarrassment in front of the state and be one of the people. You know, we're so close. We have so many great things to build on. Let's get over the line and make sure that we stay eligible for the opportunities. Never mind, not risk being sued by the AGO. I will say that excites me less, and I think it's why we started this whole conversation. If we recall, as an EDC, we started the conversation around downtown redevelopment, not because the state was telling us to redevelop our downtown, but because we care about building a good town for Franklin, right? I didn't get this to follow state orders. I'm interested in building a vision for a vibrant and fiscally sustainable Franklin. So I'm most interested in that conversation here. I get we also need to make sure that we need to check the state box, but I'm most interested in making sure that we have a downtown that's able to thrive and be redeveloped. And, you know, I think we agree, and we went out and we hired someone and they told us, yeah, the reason it hasn't been redeveloped at the rate that we are interested in is because we have overly restrictive zoning that prevents even the existing parcels from being rebuilt. So I guess I'd want to talk more about how do we make it a strong downtown Franklin, and less about you know, how do we meet the guidelines, as long as we make sure that we do meet the guidelines. Within that, we've started the conversation on parking minimums, and I guess yeah, I'd be less interested in why in the case for removing parking minimums, and more interested in what's our case for having minimum 1.5 spaces per residential unit in our downtown, and what's our case for having one per 500 square foot. Within, I mean, this puny, you know, the furthest parcel is, I don't know, less than a quarter mile from the train station. What's our reasoning for having a minimum parking at all?
If you're asking me right now, I think that zoning regulations in general, Massachusetts communities in general, have parking restrictions for certain types of uses in certain districts, and that's the way it's been going. We want to rewrite all our bylaws and do anything with it. That's a master plan issue, and I think the land use and zoning subcommittee should be addressing that issue as much as possible, and in general, the master plan committee. But I do believe that a certain amount of parking spaces should be required on private property by the developer. We should not be, every landowner in a downtown should not be saying to the town, we're gonna use your spaces. That doesn't work in after a while, unless we do develop additional spaces over time. But in the short term, right now, I'm sure things are gonna work out fine with somebody developing something and not, meeting what we want. I mean, I think it's fine, it would work out fine, because there are public parking spaces, there are things that are out there right now. But we need to create zoning that addresses long-term issues. If 10 years from now, nobody's driving a car, we won't have an issue, right? But we don't know what the future brings. But you have to zone for today. If a store comes in, they're gonna want at least a few parking spaces that are designated for them. Or they're gonna say, well, maybe this isn't the place for me. That happens a lot. And if you have a residential unit being constructed and you're thinking about buying it, a condo or whatever, well, if it doesn't come with a parking space, they're less likely to be able, even though we are right next to a train station. Even though, there is a GATRA system in place, which you can utilize also, and you can always jump on a bike. However, in today's world, we're still dealing with a lot of people with privately owned vehicles. Bellingham's working on a townhouse type of development, and the developers are saying, okay, each townhouse will have 4 parking spaces. That's crazy. Why in the world would you ever need that? Okay, and they're 4 miles away from a train station, right? So, but they're thinking, and they're actually thinking, oh, that's more transit-oriented development. I said, no, that's not transit.
No.
It's not even, you don't even think about that as transit-oriented development. But if somebody put in 100 townhouses within a half a mile of downtown, yes, you can walk to the train station, but at least most of them are going to want to have their own vehicles, and at least for now. That's the way the world is right now. So, and keep in mind that the planning board does have the ability to waive the parking requirements. If the developer comes in and says, listen, I've got X amount of units, I only want this many parking spaces, and gives good justification for it, the planning board can waive down to that number of parking spaces. It doesn't need a special permit to do that. It's actually, they have the authority to waive down the number that are required in our regulations.
Mhm.
So, I understand that, Councilor Frangillo and others are really concerned about these certain issues, and I am too. That's why maybe I'm not totally on the other side, however. And I do want, if we can get creative and come up with a totally new scheme of our zoning, I'm all for it. I don't care. I just think that we're dealing with a certain structure right now, and maintaining that structure in general is the way to go. But that's my opinion, and the council gets votes. I don't get a vote. So, again, if you want to go in a different direction with the parking. But for the immediate future, I recommend going with what is being proposed right now. It's closer to what you wanted. It may not be exactly what you want, but it is closer to what, that I think the ideal would be that, hey, nobody ever needs a parking space, but that's not the way the world is. And if we want to have a vibrant downtown, you're going to have cars. There's going to be a lot of cars downtown. One way, if that is a vibrant downtown, a lot of people living there, a lot of people shopping there, spending time there, there's going to be a lot of cars there. It's just the way it is. So, anyway, I probably answered the question 4 times here, but in general, the downtown commercial district, by adding that, you're going to be adding in over 400 more by right multifamily, the
Right.
potential for that. I know that was part of the question. I don't have it in front of me exactly right here, because that was in the first time the MAPC assessed it. They based it on if we could do that, what would it be? And that's many months ago. I haven't even looked at that later, but I do remember it was well over 400 units at that time.
Okay. Kobe still has the floor.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you touch upon so many things in that, so I want to come back. And this, again, this is the conversation that I'm interested in having. You know, I don't think that we're on different sides, because I think that we're both trying to build toward a vibrant downtown, and, you know, again, less interested in, you know, just making sure that we check off the box. Whole bunch of things in there. One is the idea that, well, surely a resident or a business would need or would want spaces in order, like, you know, for them to go there. But we're talking about parking minimums, right? So we're not saying that you can't have parking. In fact, we're allowing as much parking as you want. And the person with the most interest in selling their units is the developer. And so all we do by having a parking minimum is risk overestimating how much parking we ask them to provide. If they think that a space only needs, you know, that they can sell their place with only a few parking spaces, how great for us. That means that the market is there. And, you know, it means that it's more commercial space, it's more property revenue for us, it's more residential units, it's cheaper residential units, it's cheaper commercial rent, because they don't have to bake in the cost of parking. So, you know, again, we're just talking about the minimum. I don't need to advocate for there being a lack of parking. All I am advocating for is that we don't overestimate the amount of parking. And that seems like all a parking minimum risks. The other point was that, cars exist, and so we must build our downtown toward cars. And that scares me. I think that the reason we have the downtown that we have, if you look at old pictures of downtown and current pictures of downtown, the biggest difference is that we've knocked over a bunch of spaces and cleared the way for parking lots. And that's created a less vibrant space. A place is less desirable to go to. And we've now restricted and said, you can't touch your building unless you add a certain amount of new parking. And so what's happening, it's not that they're building it with new parking, they're choosing not to touch their buildings. And so you get places that slowly become worse and worse, and you start having places move out. I'm less interested in looking at Bellingham as a bad example, and more interested in looking at the types of downtowns that we do want to build toward. Mind you, downtowns that exist in the same world that we do with cars. I think we did a walking tour of Hudson, and Hudson's very, very similar, 495 Beltway downtown. Asked the planner, they're super, super vibrant. They've revitalized their downtown. Asked the planner, what they think about parking minimums. As they say, get rid of them. Get rid of parking minimums. That's a great comparison of an area. So this isn't, talking about some future down the road. In fact, it's talking about current. Provincetown. We all love going to Provincetown. Provincetown bans parking minimums town-wide, right? And that's a desirable place worth going to, worth driving to, mind you, and finding a parking space and making your way to downtown. It's a thing of the past, and I really think that it's time that we get on board. I mean, the American Planning Association is on board. More and more communities are going this way. I'm looking at Belfast, Maine, there's 7,000 people. Bath, Maine, they're at 9,000 people. Hudson, New York, 7,000 people. Norwich, Connecticut, 39,000. These are, suburban communities like ours who have gone this way and created more vibrant spaces. So I don't think that we're ahead of the curve. I don't think that we're building towards some future. I think that it's the very thing that's holding downtown development back. And I see no reason to have parking minimums at all anywhere because developers are going to build the amount of parking that they need to sell the units. I certainly see no reason to risk overestimating the amount of parking that we have on top of our downtown commercial district and our train station. Yeah, I hope that we can reconsider, and I'd put a strong case, and you know, if we're at that point, a motion to amend to use this opportunity to remove parking minimum from our downtown commercial district. You know, as a test case, if you will, to whether it's worth making this a townwide thing in line with the communities that we want to be.
Is that a motion?
A second.
You're gonna second the motion?
Yeah.
He made it, didn't Kobe make a motion?
Kobe made a motion.
All right.
Did you make a motion,
I can
Kobe?
make a more formal motion if
Yeah, what was the
if now's the
motion?
time. I
go
didn't
for it,
know if
Kobe.
everyone had the time to comment.
Go for it.
What did he say? What did he say? I missed what he said. What did you say, Kobe? You want us to comment more?
I defer to you. I can't read your body language to know if now's the time that you want a motion or if you want to just have the comments and go around the horn.
He's so funny. Yeah, I would take a, well, I'll take a motion and we can discuss it, right? So I'll take a motion on that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and we,
A second.
What is he
Motion
motioning?
to amend zoning bylaw amendment 24B to read in the downtown commercial district, residential and non-residential uses, (0 parking spaces), or remove the number 1 entirely and just change the numbers all the way down.
Yep, you would remove number 1 altogether.
Yeah, whichever way
right,
is
is that what you
cleaner.
mean? Like, we'll remove downtown commercial zoning district. In that, there's no parking requirements in that.
Yeah, my only fear with that is I don't know if there's some other place where we say you have to refer to this document, and that we need to then say, okay, what do we do in DCD?
Brian would know.
That was my only thought. But if you think that that's not necessary, then
Well, I'll ask Brian what he thinks.
If you're going to eliminate all parking requirements in the downtown commercial, what you would do is, number 1 would say that the downtown commercial zoning district is exempt from this section.
Okay.
And then you would have,
Yeah.
you leave 2 alone and you'd keep going. Yeah.
I'll accept that as a friendly emotion.
So that all other zoning districts are not exempt. That's what that means, right?
Right, they're identified, and 2 and 3 is what relates to those those type of zoning districts.
Okay, so we have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. We'll do a roll call vote because we have, Kobe's online.
No discussion?
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, I want to discuss it, definitely.
Okay,
Sorry. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I would like to discuss it. I think everybody would like to discuss it.
I think you're right.
Patrick hasn't had a chance to talk yet,
Please.
so I'm gonna go to Patrick first.
Yeah, so, like the Bizonis Plaza there, they built that parking lot. They have to build the parking lot because of the minimum, the Bizonis area where that statue is.
Near where the horseman statue is. So you were asking if
No,
they,
well, they had a parking requirement in that, at that time.
Yeah.
And they were required to have certain amount of parking spaces. They did not plan for that many, so I believe they had some waived off by the planning board, and they hadn't ended up with what they did. So,
Okay, that's my question, because I think that's a good example of a place that probably didn't need parking, because that's the type of place if somebody could park on the street, you just go in. And then you get more people walking around downtown.
Right.
Instead of just going by zones, picking up stuff and driving out.
Right. That's correct.
Beautiful.
is that,
That's what I was
Correct.
thinking, like Ferrero's Market too. I know that's longer ago, but the same idea, people drive in, pick up a pizza, pick up a sub, drive out, drive home. Where if they didn't have those parking lots, they'd park someplace else, and they might stop at the bookstore and might go in other places.
The flip side, if you don't mind, the flip side on something to that effect would be that they decide to get their pizza outside of the downtown. They don't even come in because they can't find parking space. It's convenient for people that live within walking distance. They don't need to park. They can just walk. But if they're outside of the downtown and they're coming in, they're most likely going to be in a car and they're going to want to park someplace.
Right,
Right
right.
now, they're going to find public parking spaces and they'll walk over, whatever.
But
In the future, that might change. That's why leaving parking in place and allowing the planning board to waive down to a certain amount is what we do now, so.
Right.
But it's healthier too if you're going by zoning to park farther away.
Probably better if we
Not
did
for
get
their
the
wallet.
guy.
Instead of driving right in front of it.
Okay.
I'll wait my turn.
That's good.
Is that it?
Yep.
That it? Brian?
Hi, Madam Chair. Okay, time out, please. So we basically just lost 3 businesses already downtown, and I'm counting the bookstore because they're not gonna be able to sell it, okay? And if you think I'm wrong, you're wrong. Pizonis, the dentist in there, I'll just use your example, Mr. Counselor Sheridan, and I appreciate your thoughts, believe me. I have to agree with Brian. Hey, that's great. I have to agree with you. I think that dentist would be gone, Pizonis would be gone, the convenience store, that neighborhood, there's 5 of them down there. Dean's not just gonna support that with walking kids. I think it would be gone if there wasn't that parking. And I go in there a lot, and that lot's filled. Maybe you guys could go take a look at that. So that's what concerns me about no parking. I just think we're losing 3 already. That would be 6 downtown. My other question was, just Mr. Brian, do we not want 3 bedrooms downtown?
Do we not want
Want
3
3
bedrooms?
bedrooms?
There's nothing wrong with a 3-bedroom unit.
Right, but like, okay, let's just I'll use Councilor Frangillo as an example. Say he lived there, his sibling lived there, his parents lived there. I mean, that's 4 cars right there. So those people can't, people can't afford houses now. So there might actually be a lot of families that rent now. And I don't understand who's gonna go down there if they can't park at all. Are they, God forbid, go to Bellingham? I mean, that's not, how do I get people downtown if I can't have people there? You know? Okay, these are my reasoning why we should have some parking, not no parking, is what I'm getting at. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brian. So what I want to remind everyone is that just because there's not a minimum requirement, doesn't mean there's no parking. Okay, so that if somebody comes in and builds something, doesn't put any parking in, nobody goes there, nobody's gonna buy that place. Right? So what Council Frangillo said is true. I was there in Hudson. I asked the town planner, how did they get the vitalization downtown? In that area, they removed parking requirements. They allowed people to decide for themselves, the developers to decide for themselves how many parking spaces they needed to be viable.
Okay.
Instead of the town controlling what the developer can and can't do, okay? And one of the things that I think we forget, right? It's not that we don't want any, but we don't want to overdo the parking. In Leominster, there was they had a lot of issues out in Leominster because of I was at a meeting today with the climate chief, Melissa Hoffer, and she went out there to Leominster, and they had all of those floods and all those issues because they over-parked. They have too many parking spaces, too big parking lots, and that created the floods. And so now they have to go back and redesign all of those things and all the drainage systems and everything for that. And so those are the kind of things we have to think about as we think about Franklin in 20 years, from 10 years from now, 20 years from now, how do we mitigate the floods potential? We have a lot of paved areas. And those are the kind of things we need to be thinking about as a master plan. We need to think about the things we can do today to help that, to help with those sort of issues as well. And so, how do we get people downtown? We allow for people to live there. How do we keep our businesses? We have more people downtown, higher density. They have more built-in customers, right? Our businesses are going out of business because they don't have enough customers, right?
Correct. That goes back why, like,
But
you
I-
can't
but-
get more people down
But
there
if the people,
because-
if the businesses, wait a minute, the businesses in Hudson are doing really well. They have, their parking lots are behind all of the businesses, and there's shared parking, okay?
I wish I
And
was
it's just in
invited.
that one little area, but
Yes, I agree
that's
with
what they did, and it made a huge difference. And they allowed for, people to live. I know Jamie's got his
I
hand
know.
up, but I'm just on my soapbox, getting revved up for later on tonight. All right, I am gonna stop talking, and I'm gonna go over to Jamie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. Just really quickly, so I think Councilor Frangillo and, Councilor Hamlin and many others have made a very passionate plea on this issue for a long time. I think it's probably important for the community to move it forward, to get a broader debate at the council level and the planning board on this issue. I would note that 19 Dean Avenue was permitted by the ZBA for 16 units. If you think of Dean Avenue, right behind Dean Bank, the old Pellegri building there. So think of that parcel, 4 stories, 16 housing units, no parking, okay? So the developer made a proposal on Monday night to the planning board for a different project. And I understand there were some concerns from the planning board that night. But in terms of this issue that Councilor Frangillo is talking about, and, Hudson's story is true, the Leominster issues that Councilor Hammond's speaking to, all great examples. But I want people to think about Franklin and use 19 Dean Avenue as a perfect example of exactly what this issue is. So that parcel has already been approved for 16 units. If this bylaw goes through, the original proposal of 16 units, the developer did not believe there was a market to build that building and fill those units without one space per unit. So if you get the reason why minimum parking requirements are there is because of the market. I don't think anybody could disagree with Councilor Frangillo in his sense that let the developer make that choice. I mean, that is an American spirit that is beyond anything else we could talk about. Let them choose. But if the developer chooses no parking to maximize the floor area of the building, like 19 Dean Ave, and people decide that they can't live their daily life without a car because of our, bluntly, rotten public transit system, and it's not just about the train, it's about daily items that you have to go out and do, okay? Where are those cars gonna go? That is the innocent byproduct to what Councilor Frangillo and others are proposing. But I think for the well, Kobe, it's okay, you and I can disagree, but if those units are built on Dean Ave, and those residents there need a car or want a car, there's 2 scenarios. One, the market rate of those buildings will go down because people don't want them because they can't have a parking space. 2, we're going to have a lot of illegal parking on side streets, parking in front of people's houses or in the Depot Street lot. 3, we have to change the program to the Depot Street lot, which is very complicated with procurement and public fairness. You can't just deed those spaces to personal people, which is great for the town of Franklin because they'll all park there and we'll all give them tickets and we'll all make revenue.
Yep.
Okay? But in earnest, with what's being proposed, 19 Dean Avenue is the perfect example of what no parking requirements will be. I'm not suggesting that's right or wrong. I'm not sitting here saying that that's good or bad. I just want the EDC and others that are listening to say, think of that parcel, 4 stories, 16 units. If they don't rent them or sell them, where are cars going to go? If people have cars and they try to sneak in, we know about the Dean College problem, where students that are freshmen aren't allowed to have cars, right? And they still bring them anyway. So residents who buy units there are going to get a car someday. It's just nature. There's no way that somebody that can live down there can live their life. I shouldn't say no way. It's very, very hard and rare. If the developer who got those permits thought there was a market out there for 16 units with no automobiles, it'd be built by now. But I think that's the challenge with the minimum parking requirements. But I think for the health of the system, I think the EDC should move this on to the council, move it to the planning board, because Councilor Frangillo and others have made this passionate plea for this issue for many years now. And maybe with MBTA communities on the horizon, maybe this is the issue that we have to do. I think the question for you, Madam Chair, is do you want to leave compliance of MBTA communities in the balance while that issue gets refereed? And that's obviously a choice of the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Kobe?
Yeah, so much there, and perhaps we I would, I want to be sensitive to the time, and I would push that we continue this conversation at a larger level. I agree that 19 Dean Ave is a great example of a project that's gotten worse on the second time around because we over mandated parking. We're proposing to.
That's literally not what I said. You're right.
No,
That's not what I
I
said.
think, sorry, I agree that
Yeah.
19 Dean
Come on.
is a good example.
Thank you, Mark.
It's okay, Kobe. Hey, you guys, come on. Do I have to hit the gavel? Go ahead, Kobe.
Thank you. I agree that it serves as a great example, and I hope that becomes part of this conversation. You got back to the point again. The market decides. I really would push that we find. I mean, we'll have plenty of time. Anyone who thinks that parking minimums are the savior of our downtown, find an example of a downtown that's increased parking minimums as a way of improving their downtown. You won't find it. All of your favorite places to go, use shared parking, use street parking, use public parking lots, and have a dense downtown corridor that welcomes new development with people that are able to live in and above the buildings where they can shop and play. That creates an environment and an ecosystem for your basic needs to exist, for your transit to get better use. Certainly, if a market exists for those who need fewer automobiles than 2 per person, then they'll be built. And if the market does not exist, then it would not be built, as we've all agreed. So I see no harm. I only see downside in, potential for overestimating the minimum. I really do feel strongly about this. I've been advocating for the removal of parking minimums town-wide. I understand if we're not ready to see that, but certainly in our very, very small downtown commercial district, what a great opportunity for us to actually allow those spaces to be redeveloped in the way that developers see best fit for the community.
Thank you, Kobe. Does anyone else have anything to say?
No, I just agree that maybe we can continue this.
Well, we have a motion. Would you like to pull your motion back and or remove your motion and we'll talk about it again?
No, I'd like to vote on the motion and push it forward.
Okay,
This is
well,
the best thing
would
for
you
the
accept
community.
a friendly
Go.
amendment to 1 parking space per residential unit, not 0?
Residents.
I would not. I mean, this is a
Okay.
principled thing, right?
Okay.
A parking minimum, all it does is risk. If the developer thinks that they need one space per unit, then they'll add one space per unit. If someone is able to live without a space per unit, how lucky are we to have someone that wants to live only within walking distance of our downtown? I know where they'll be spending their money, and they won't be adding to our traffic.
We'll go.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote.
Mark wants to speak too.
Oh, Mark, oh, you want to speak? Okay.
Is that all right?
We have someone from the audience who would like to speak. Yes, come on up.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Steve. Better. I just want to voice a few opinions and comments. First of all, I think it's really important that we meet the MBTA community law. So I applaud Brian's suggestions to get us there. That's really important. I do also support, as Kobe has mentioned, eliminating parking requirements. I also believe in the free market economy. I think that that's the best way to let this situation settle out to whatever it needs to be, is let the market decide what it needs to be. So eliminating requirements for parking minimums makes perfect sense to me. Let the develop. We were perhaps having a little side conversation here. I think it might settle out to the right balance at some point. Maybe some people will build units that should have built parking and see the error of their ways. But I think the free market should determine what the right level of parking is, and there's no reason for us to oversubscribe what it should be. I'm a member of AARP, and Brian, someday you probably will be too. But
I already am.
I already am.
AARP says parking minimums cause more off-street parking to be built than needed, which in turn causes excessive development costs. Where excess parking is not used, empty spaces can be a blight within shopping area or neighborhood. Eliminating or reducing off-street parking requirements allows developers more flexibility in the amount of parking they provide and how they provide it. This change removes a barrier to new investments, especially in downtowns and transit centers, and potentially makes the final product more affordable. So when we talk about affordable housing, and I appreciate what Brian was saying earlier, maybe we can give some tax breaks around the impervious surfaces tax. But I think removing the requirement to build perhaps unnecessary parking spaces is actually a much bigger financial incentive to the builder. So I just think there's a lot of positives here that we should explore per Kobe's suggestion. We try this on the small downtown area, which is meant to be the area that the MBTA community's laws are all about, right? It's the area that's close to the train station, the transit center, that perhaps doesn't have as high a requirement for a car. So I would encourage this part of the board to pass through and vote and approve a no minimum parking requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right, is there anyone else?
No.
Kobe has his hand down. All right, let's do a roll call vote. Kobe,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Brian.
This is to move it to the council.
This is to move it to the council to hopefully go to the planning board.
Thank
I
you.
think we're still voting on the
yes.
Right.
motion to amend.
Right.
This is the amendment, right?
The amendment, yeah,
Amendment.
right? This is the
We need to
amendment.
approve the amendment first.
Right.
Vote again,
You have to vote the amendment first.
because we're doing.
Oh,
Okay,
then
vote
no-
for the amendment.
Then no to the amendment, but
Okay. Yeah, chair says yes. Okay. Then we have to
Vote as
then we have to vote?
Yep.
To move it.
To
All
move
right, so I accept a motion to move the proposed bylaw change as amended to the town council to move it, so then it will go to the planning board.
So moved.
Okay, hey, all in.
second.
Second, okay. So, let's do a roll call vote. Kobe,
Yes.
Patrick? Brian?
Yes.
Chair, yes. Okay. Excellent, you guys. Good. All right, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Nice job.
non-debatable.
Kobe?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Chair, yes. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Recording stopped.
You and I are like the same.